Welcome to lecture number 13 of Linguistics 2 ENG 504. Now, as you can see in the first slide, the word written generativism. That is an indication of what we are going to do today, and it's an indication that we are now going to move on to the theories of language formation. The first one we're going to study is generativism. The generative grammar, you might have heard about it. But first of all, let's talk about what we did in the last lecture. Like you see, review of lecture 12 on the next slide. We talked about the structure and form. What is structure? It's the raw form of language, the structure, the words, the symbols, the sounds that are in the raw form, that is not organized, that are in haphazard form, that could be a cluster of sounds. And what is form? Yes, it is a combination. It is an organized form. It is the finished product. It is not raw. It is the meaningful structure that you see, that you use it in your life, the meaningful sentences that you use in your life to convey your meanings, to convey what you want to say. Raw material, you can see the second bullet structure. Raw material has no specific meanings, whereas form is organized, has a meaning, it's a finished product. Then we talked about the synchronic and diachronic approaches. What is synchronic? The study of language, yes, at a particular time, at that very time. The study of language as a speaker uses at that very time. And what is diachronic? When you take history or the historical developments into account, how the language has passed through different stages, or what was the past of the language and what may be the future of the language. So when you talk about the historical developments, you include the historical development, you consider the historical changes in the language. That approach of study is called diachronic study. Now, let's move on to the theories, different theories that different linguists gave about the structure of language, how the language is formed, how the language is produced in the mind, how the language is uttered, right? And the first theory we're going to talk about today is generativism. It was developed by Noam Chomsky and his followers in 1950s, the same man who we know with reference to competence and performance. Yes, we talked about competence and performance in one of our last lectures, and we saw that the competence is the ability, the rules in the mind, and performance, what the person performs, what language the person utters. So we're going to talk about these two again a little today. We'll be giving reference to these two today again when we talk in detail about generativism. It came as a reaction to behaviorism. Now, Noam Chomsky, in fact, was against any stimulus-produced language. He was against the behaviorists. The movement given by behaviorists was that a person produces language under the influence of some stimulus. Chomsky disagreed. In reaction to this movement, Chomsky talked about the generative grammar, or the ability of a person to generate language. Now, Chomsky asserted the language is free from stimulus control. He didn't believe that language comes out in reaction to some stimulus and behavior. A person behaves in reaction to some stimulus. You give a stimulus to a person, and the person generates. Person gives out words or gives out sentences or shows a certain behavior. Creativity, that is the quality of human beings. It's an attribute which distinguishes man from machines, right? So, creative, man is creative, man is capable to create, man is capable to generate. Now, what generation? What does man generate? Let's see. Humans are capable of producing varieties of utterances. Human beings, they have the ability, they have the power to produce so many varieties of language. they can utter so many varieties. They have that ability, they have that power to control their words. They have their power to produce different utterances. They have their power to use different words on different occasions. They have their power to generate sentences. They have their power to organize sentences using different words. But this is rule-governed creativity. Man is creative. Man can create, but then it's not a haphazard creativity. It is a rule-governed creativity. Creativity has to follow certain rules. Only then you can expect the meaningful utterances. Only then you can expect that the sentences which a man utters, or the words or the sounds that man utters, are meaningful when they have a proper relationship with each other, when they have been organized in a proper way. So it's a rule-governed creativity. Our utterances have a certain grammatical structure. Likewise, if we talk about the utterances or the structures or the sentence, the sentence level, or at the text level, whenever man writes something, whenever man produces a sentence, it has a certain structure. You can't understand a sentence if it doesn't have a grammatical structure. Of course, there would be some problems, there could be some problems with the grammatical structure, and that you refer to as mistakes or grammatical slips or errors that can be corrected, and they are in control. A man can control that, and a man can correct that. But sometimes you get meaningless sentences where the correction is beyond your control. So rules govern the utterances, rules govern the production of sentences, rules govern the production of language. They conform to identifiable rules of well-formedness. They conform the sentences, the structures, the language that is under the influence of the rules. It has to be generated, it has to be used under the rules of well-formedness. They are identifiable rules. You can identify, you know the rules, and you apply those rules to the sentences, and under the influence of those rules, you give your utterances, you give your language. Now, productivity, whatever you produce, whatever you generate, cannot be identified with creativity. It is not just like creativity, but they have an intrinsic connection with them. The creativity and productivity, they have some relationship with each other. They are not the same, but they have a relationship. Whatever you produce depends on the creative ability. It has a link with the creative ability. They have some link, some intrinsic connection between them. They are not the same, because sometimes what you produce may not be the actual index of your creative abilities. Sometimes your production may be affected by circumstances. Sometimes whatever language you speak, whatever sentences you speak, could be under the influence of situations, could be under the influence of circumstances, and that may not be the true index, the true picture of your actual creative ability. So they have a link, but they cannot be called as the same thing. Central component of Chomskyan generativism is the rules that determine productivity of human language. They have formal properties of structure of human mind. So let's see this bullet again. Central component, some words which need focus here. The central component, the main component of Chomskyan generativism. Rules are, what is the central component? What is the central thing? What is the pivotal thing here? The rules which determine productivity of human language. The rules which are behind the production of human language. They have formal properties. They are organized. They are proper rules. They can be applied. And they have formal properties of the structure of human mind. So whatever is present in the human mind, I've written the word mentalism in the bracket. This means related to mind, mentalism, the grammar, the rules that are present, inbuilt, they have a formal shape in the shape of the Chomskyan generativism. Chomskyan generativism is basically the true the pivotal thing, the central thing of this grammar or generative grammar, or the theory or the idea given by Chomsky, the generativism. The central thing is the rules. So it depends on the rules. What rules, or the formal shape of the rules, right? They have formal properties. They are the formal shape. The rules are the formal shape of the structure of human mind. What is present in human mind that comes out, right? And in formal shape, when you get the rules, then you get the right language, or you create a language, you generate sentences, you generate utterances based on those rules. So the formal shape of the rules which are present in the mind, what is it? That is the true language. That is the language. That is the proper utterance, right? Central component of Chomskyan generativism is the rules. That is the central, the pivotal thing. So it depends on rules, what language you're producing. There are significant differences. Now see, what is this idea different or it's similar to the other theories given? So we're going to talk a little about the differences or the similarities with the other theories. What is similar, what is different between what is different from the ideas given by the other linguists. So there are significant differences between Chomskyan generativism and Bloomfieldian and post-Bloomfieldian structuralism. Now we see another word here, structuralism. So there are differences. Structuralism, the idea given by Bloomfield, another linguist, Bloomfield. We'll talk about structuralism later, but structuralism, it focuses mainly on the structure of language, what structure is formed under circumstances. So Bloomfield and his followers, basically they emphasized on the structural diversity of languages. What differences are there? How are the languages different as far as the structure is concerned? What are the structural differences between the languages? Bloomfield and his followers, they talked about the differences. They talked about what is different between two languages, or what is the difference among many languages. So what are they focusing on? They focused on the differences, the structural differences. Generativists, in contrast, what are they saying? They are saying that what is more important is the common, is the common factor. What is more common? What is common between the languages? They focus on the common factors. They focus on the similarities, rather than the Bloomfield and their followers. They focused on the differences between languages. Whereas these people, generativists, they focused more on the common structure, the common thing, the similar things between languages. Right. Moving on, we talk about another difference now. Chomsky attaches more importance to the formal properties of language. He talks about the organized form. He talks about the formal properties of languages. What is the formal structure? What is the true formal structure, the exact structure? He doesn't focus on the informal utterance. He doesn't focus on the utterance which is not organized. He attaches more importance to the formal properties of languages, to the nature of rules that their description requires. So he doesn't talk about he doesn't talk much about the rules and their description that their description requires. Describing language, he talks more about the actual formal property of the language. He doesn't talk about the rule that are used to describe the language. He doesn't give much importance to the rules. He attaches more importance to the formal properties. Chomsky says that human language faculty is innate and species specific. So it's basically innate, inbuilt. That is what we mean by innate, is the inbuilt ability. Innate means it is already present in the mind of the speaker. Human language power is basically present in the mind. It's an inbuilt, and it is species specific. Every species has a specific language, has a specific power to generate language. It can vary with people, it can vary with species. So whatever is present in mind, it has a structure, it has a form that is already present, and whatever comes out is organized only according to the circumstances, so according to the situations. So he says human language faculty, human language power is basically innate and species specific. Innate and species specific means genetically transmitted and unique to species. This is what we mean by saying specific to species, special to species, fixed for special species. So it's genetically transmitted. It is based on inheritance. We get that power from inheritance, the power to generate language, the power to generate utterances. Human language, the power to learn a language, the power to acquire language, the power to generate language, that is different with different species, and that is basically transmitted through inheritance. It is genetically transmitted, and every species has a different shape of that already, that structure of to produce language in the mind. Several complex formal properties are found in all languages. So different languages, they have several formal complex properties. The languages which are being spoken, they have their structure, they have a complex formal properties. So Chomsky is again stressing on the formal properties. He is stressing on the proper rules. He is stressing on the organized rules, the organized properties of language which we generate, which we produce. They are arbitrary. Now, here again we come to another point, that it is arbitrary. These rules, this power, this innate power is basically arbitrary sometimes and serve no known purpose. They cannot be deduced from anything else that we know of human beings. They cannot be taken out. They cannot result out of analysis of different activities of human beings. They are just arbitrary. They are situational sometimes. They are just agreed. They are they can be said to be the rules that are agreed upon by people, or by a social class, by a group of people. So they are arbitrary, and these are complex and formal properties that are already present, and under those rules you generate different utterances. So the rules are arbitrary, but they are complex and they are formal, and different languages, they have different rules. Okay, now in recent years, in between theoretical and descriptive linguistics, the universal formal properties in language help to construct a general theory of language structure. So what happens? This is the help we are getting. This has assisted in forming up the theories, in forming up the general theory of language structure. The theoretical descriptive linguistics, in between the theoretical and the descriptive linguistics, the universal formal properties in language. So when we are looking at the formal properties of a language, when we are looking at the rules, basically when we are looking at that innate structure, basically we are getting a help. We are getting a help in forming up the general theory of language structure. So we can now decide, we can have an idea about, or give an idea, or we can even give the structure, proper structure of language, and this is what assisted the different language analysts, or the different theorists or linguists who were giving out theories and were studying language structure. They got an idea from this universal formal properties in language. They got an idea that yes, every language has formal properties. Every language has some structures, complex structures, relationships between the different components of language, and that already present structure which is in the mind of a speaker that is basically the pivotal point, that is the central point for the formation of different languages. So they could come out with different theories. A further difference, no, look at another difference. A further difference between Bloomfieldian and post-Bloomfieldian structuralism is Chomskyan distinction between competence and performance. Now here we're talking about the two distinctions we already talked in one of our last lectures. We are going to refer to them because they have a relationship with the today's lesson, and they have a relationship. The idea of competence and performance, that was again given by Noam Chomsky, and they have a relationship with the Bloomfieldian and post-Bloomfieldian structuralism. So let us just compare the two things. The speaker's linguistic competence, let's have a look at it again. A speaker's linguistic competence is that part of his knowledge of language system which makes him produce indefinitely large set of sentences that make up his language. Let's look at it again. What is linguistic competence? Is basically the knowledge of a language system which makes a speaker produce different sentences that make up a language. So what is competence? Is the ability, it's the part of the knowledge of language system. A person builds up the competence. A person, whatever he hears around him. A child, let's take an example of a child, that the child, whatever he hears around him, gradually builds up the language, and that innate ability again helps him to produce utterances, and that ability to acquire language, that helps him to add up to his vocabulary, and gradually the child improves the language and gradually builds up competence. So what is competence basically? It's basically the part of the knowledge system, part of the knowledge system, the part of the knowledge about the system. So knowledge about the system. Which system? The system of language. Performance is language behavior. Looking at the other term, performance. What is performance? Performance is basically the language behavior. What is how a speaker behaves under the rules, using his competence, how a person speaks, how a person utters different words, what language the person utters. So that is the behavior, how a person behaves. He behaves under the influence of competence. No, this may be different sometimes under circumstances, but yes, it has a relationship with the competence. It is determined not only by linguistic competence but by some other factors as well, as we just talked about language behavior, or the behavior of a person under the influence of competence. Now here, it's not only the competence that gives that helps a person to produce language, that helps a person to behave, but behavior is also determined by other factors. Behavior is also affected by several other factors, like for example a speaker's emotional attitude towards what he is saying, a speaker's attitude towards his listener, the speaker's behavior under the under situations or circumstances. A speaker may be uttering different language, or speaker may not show the same performance as it could be shown based on his competence. So the true it cannot be, it may not be the true picture. The behavior may not be the true picture of the competence. Sometimes a person may behave differently. Sometimes a person's performance may be different. It may be affected because of different situations, because of barriers, because of internal problem, some problems related with his mind, or problems related outside with the environment. A person under the stress of situations, stress of circumstances, may not perform as well as he could perform if he was given an ideal situation. So competence is not the only factor that affects performance, but there are so many other factors, the social factors or the internal factors, the external factors that could affect performance of a person. Now the factors can be social, environment. Let's look at the slide. The factors can be social, conventional, conventional beliefs about the world, the speaker's emotional attitudes towards what he is saying, or his assumptions about interlocutor's attitude. So what he is performing could be under the influence of these things. It could be affected by these things. So a person when talking is under so many other factors. The physiological and psychological mechanisms are involved in the production of utterances. Now look at these two big words, physiological and psychological. Both these things, the external and the internal mechanisms. What is going on inside the mind of a speaker? He could be under stress. He could be relaxed. He could be worried. He could be scared. So the internal mechanisms going on inside his mind, and the external situation, the situations, the environment outside could be noisy. The environment could be stressful. So these two things, they affect his utterances. They affect his communication. We can give an example of a debater, like somebody debating. He may not perform as well as he could perform if he was given an ideal situation. He could sometimes very good debaters, they lose, they forget their speech and they leave the stage. So whatever they are uttering, they could that could come out. That is basically they are uttering because of under the influence of so many things, so many other factors. They may not be relaxed. There might be some mechanism going on in their mind. They might be under stress and they might be worried. So they may not perform as well as they could perform if we talk about their competence. So they may be competent enough to perform better. So competence is not the only thing. It's basically so many other factors that is affecting the utterances of people. Now, the competence performance distinction is at the heart of generativism. But these two things, they are basically at the heart of generativism. Generativism believes that these two distinctions are the pivotal point. They look at these. This is one of the main differences between generativists and the other linguists, that competence and performance, they play an important part in a person's performance, in a person's ability to acquire language, or in a person's ability to generate language. A speaker's linguistic competence is a set of rules which he has constructed because of his application of his innate capacity. Now this is what we meant. We talked about this innate capacity, the inbuilt structure, the inbuilt grammar, the inbuilt language inside the brain, the innate capacity, power for language acquisition, to the language data that he has heard around him in his childhood. Okay, we had an example of a child. The child hears so many sounds. The child hears so many words around him, and it's a child's ability to take those take those words, to grasp different sounds and words, and then it depends on the child's ability to generate language. So the child picks up words, picks up sounds from around him, and gives them some structures. Now you know it very well that when a child starts talking, some of his sentences are sometimes are not really clearly structured. The grammar may be spoiled, the grammar may not be the proper, and even the sounds may not be proper. The pronunciation of some words may not be proper. Usually we have experienced that the child, when starts talking, he misses his verb to be. He misses the verb to be. Man, go. Child, go. Mama, come. So these words, he's trying to pick up the words, but he doesn't have ability yet to form them, to compose the sentences, to put different sentences, different words in the proper place. So this gradually, when the child grows up, is exposed to the society, goes to school, and he listens to his teacher, listens to her teacher, listens to his friends, then the child grows. While in the process of growing, the child picks up more words, adds to his vocabulary, and then the child learns the gets the ability to form up sentences. So then the competence, gradually the child builds up competence. So competence comes after the child has acquired so much the child has acquired a lot of words, and the competence is basically power, the ability to acquire language and to produce language, depending on the power of a person, depending on the part of the knowledge. It's a part of the knowledge. So linguistic is a set of rules which he has constructed. Constructed how does a child construct competence? Because of his application of his innate capacity, he applies the capacity of language acquisition to the language data. So whatever language is getting, he is applying that ability, the innate ability, to those words, to those sentences, and then the child builds up the competence to speak more sentences, to speak meaningful sentences, to speak, to give out meaningful utterances. So it's basically the inbuilt the capacity to acquire language, and then you can expect a competence of a person. So a person's competence, that is why we say that competence is not the same with all the people. You have incompetent people sometimes, you have competent people. The level of acquiring language and the level of producing language is different with different people. So competence is basically that strength to generate language, the strength to acquire language and then generate language. So that may be different with different people, because different people had different circumstances, different people had different mental filter, different people had different hereditary properties, the brain, the mind, or the intelligence, or the IQ level, they had different, and that could come from the family, or that could come from the inheritance. So every person has inherited different power to acquire language, and that is why different levels of competence we expect from different people. So the grammar now that the linguist constructs can be seen as a model of native speakers' competence. The grammar, or the language that a linguist produces or constructs, it is a model of the native speaker's competence. Whatever competence a person acquires, depending on that competence, again, you produce language. The speaker produces language, generates language, builds up language in his mind and produces that. So that language, when studied, can give us a picture of competence, can give us an index of what is present in the person's mind, can give a picture of his power to acquire language and generate language. This gives him the ability to produce indefinitely large number of sentences. Well, this is true that a person keeps on adding vocabulary, keeps on adding to the vocabulary, keeps on listening to the words and adding and improving the vocabulary, improving the language. With experience, a person definitely improves vocabulary. With experience, with more reading, with more exposure, a person builds up the vocabulary, the storehouse of vocabulary. The person builds up language, improves language, and then produces indefinitely large number of sentences. And that is because of the competence level. That is because of the power to acquire and generate language. This aspect, with its reinterpretation and revitalization of the traditional notion of universal grammar, has attracted philosophers and psychologists. Now this is a very important aspect now, the new theory, the new shape of the traditional notion of universal grammar. Previously, it was just said that there is a universal grammar which is common with everybody. But now this aspect says that the competence level differs. There are different storehouses in the minds of different people, and different people have different power to generate language. So this thing has really attracted the philosophers. Now they are putting this theory to many philosophical problems. They are trying to understand the philosophical problems by applying this theory of language, this theory of acquiring language, this theory of generating language. They are applying, and then you have the psychologists. Again, they are applying these rules, the new rules, the reinterpretation and revitalization of traditional notion of universal grammar. Now they are applying this new picture to the psychological problems. Whatever problems occur in the minds, whatever problems occur in the brains or minds of people, that could be solved because of the grammar. For example, in patients who are sometimes uttering different sentences or meaningless sentences, when they are treated, the patients are treated, the doctors, the psychologists, they could see why they are uttering such sentences. They could go to the background, in what situations they lived, or what changes they experienced in their life, what crisis they experienced in their life which made them utter such sentences. So this is a new theory which is helping the philosophers and psychologists. So this is a new revolution basically in the field of language, in the field of language formation, in the field of language generation. Now, the distinction between competence and performance is here similar to Saussur's distinction between Lang and Perroll. Now, the theory or the idea which we talked about in one of our last lectures, Ferdinand de Saussure gave us two ideas, two terms, Lang and Perroll. Lang, the rules, the set of rules, the code of producing language, the code which governs the production of language, and Perroll, actually the concept of the object, whatever the person builds up, whatever the person speaks. So Lang, the rules, remember, Lang, the rules, and Perroll, the production. You remember one of the last lectures, both of them rest upon the feasibility of separating what is linguistic from what is non-linguistics. Now there is a common factor, there is some similarity, you could have some link between the theory of Chomsky, the Chomsky's ideas of Chomsky, and the ideas of Saussure. The Saussure's ideas of Lang and Perroll, and Chomsky's generativism, when he talks about the generative ability, when he talks about the competence and performance. Both of them, they talk about separating what is linguistics from what is non-linguistic, what is actually related with language formation and language generation, and what is not related with language generation. More identifiable difference is on the rules of syntax. Now both these people, both these ideas, basically the difference between these two ideas is on the basis of syntax, the rules of syntax, sentence formation. They are stressing more on the sentence formation. Now let's proceed by looking at how they are focusing on the sentence production and the structure of sentences, and what is basically the difference between the two different ideas. Saussure states Lang as a system of rules and Perroll as the actual sentences. Now he doesn't talk about the rules base, he doesn't talk about the rules which govern, the law which governs. He says Lang is a system of rules and Perroll is actually sentences. Perroll is the actual production, whereas Chomsky, he comments on the capacity to produce and understand syntactically well-formed sentences, and that is the central part of speaker's linguistic competence. Chomsky basically talks about the power, the innate power to produce well-formed sentences, the capacity to produce well-formed sentences. Chomsky talks about the power, the capacity to produce syntactically well-formed sentences, whereas Saussure talks about the rules, and he says that actually Lang is just a set of rules and they exist in relation to each other, right? They exist in relation to each other. He talks about the relative existence of different things in rules, different factors or different law or different principles in the rules. And he says that Perroll is basically the production of the interrelationship between the sentences, whereas Chomsky basically focuses more on the innate capacity, the power to produce sentences. Competence performance distinction has been criticized. Now there are criticism, there is basically there is a group of people who said that performance, the word performance doesn't really give the clear indication. So it was Chomsky again who himself gave it the title of grammatical competence and pragmatic competence, because performance does not give the real clue. So performance is a general word. It could be any kind of performance. So basically it was again Chomsky who gave the title of grammatical competence, and he gave a distinction between the two kinds of competence: the grammatical competence, the power to produce a grammar, and pragmatic competence, the power to give meaning to that sentence, the power to organize a sentence, and the power to give meaning. Because we know a meaningful sentence means that it is organized in a nice way, it is organized in a correct way, and again it carries meanings. It carries a meaningful, it carries a proper meaning, and it carries a sense. So that is why he is basically separating the two ideas. He says grammatical competence and the pragmatic competence, because the word performance is a general word, doesn't give the clear clue what kind of performance you're talking about a speaker, whether he has the whether he's producing the is linking the words correctly. That is also a performance, that is linking the words correctly. But again, the performance also is that he is also giving the correct meaning to the sentences. So these two terms were given just to remove that confusion between what kind of performance a person is giving. Chomskyan generativism is closer to Saussurean and post-Saussurean structuralism. Now here we see some common things between Chomskyan generativism and Saussurean and post-Saussurean structuralism. What are these common things? The close relationship is on the necessity of drawing a distinction between language system and the use of that system in particular contexts of utterances. What are the common factors? What is this close relationship? It is based on the necessity of drawing a distinction between language system and the use of that system in particular contexts of utterance. Man needs to differentiate between language system, what is language, and the use of that language in particular contexts of utterance. You need to have a distinction. What is the actual system, what a sentence should actually be, and how it was uttered in a particular situation. What is a sentence actually? What is the correct sentence as far as the structure, or as far as the meaning of the sentence is concerned, and how it was uttered in a situation. So there needs to be a clear distinction between them. Now that is how it is related with the Saussurean or post-Saussurean idea. This close relationship is based on the necessity of drawing a distinction. We need to draw a distinction between the two things. It does not accept the principles of functionalism, but accepts the phonological notions of Prague school. Now, functionalism, it doesn't agree with the principles of functionalism. Functionalism means that what role the language is playing in particular contexts. So that idea is only related with the situation, what role the language is playing. But here in generativism and in the Saussurean or post-Saussurean ideas, we see that there has to be a distinction between what the language is and what basically the situation is, how it is being used in different situations. You can't link both of them together and just look at the function the role plays in different situations. Chomsky's universal grammar. Now let's just put some light on what is generative grammar. Chomsky was against the stimulus response theory. He asserted that language is free from their control, generates, does not relate to any process of sentence production in real time by speakers. So Chomsky's generative grammar is basically the grammar which is based on the production, the power to generate. He was against the stimulus response theory. He said that the power to generate doesn't depend on the stimulus, on the outside stimulus. A person doesn't utter because of stimulus. He asserted that language is free from their control. Language, if generated, has to be generated because a person needs to generate, needs to speak under the rules present in his mind. So it is not stimulus related, and a person doesn't speak because of the stimulus, and the language doesn't change. The behavior is not built based on the stimulus. The behavior is built based on the inner need. Generate does not relate to any process of sentence production in real time by speakers. There is no link between the generation of sentences, generation of language, and the sentence production in real time, the actual situation. Right? There is no link between these two situations, and the person has the ability to produce language, and that depends on the inner inbuilt structure to produce language, inbuilt structure that makes a person generate language. Generative grammar is a set of rules which, operating upon a finite vocabulary of units, generates a set of strings or sequence or syntax as sets of units brought together in a particular construction. Generative grammar. What is generative grammar? Let's put some more light on it. Let's look at some of the definitions given, because we are going to introduce this idea in this lecture, and we're going to talk in detail about this in the next lesson. So generative grammar, it is a set of rules which, operating upon a finite vocabulary of units, it operates upon a certain specific vocabulary units, and then under the influence of that, what happens? A set of strings or sequence or syntax, that is a set of units brought together in a particular construction. So it's some vocabulary present, and out of that vocabulary, by linking the words, by organizing the words, so many different utterances we get. So many, a person generates so many utterances just by selecting the right words and organizing them at the right place. And so, as we talked about in our last lecture, that there are two aspects. One thing is to select the right thing and then to put it in the right order. So generative grammar is basically a set of rules which, operating upon, the rules are operated upon and operating upon a finite. The rules are applied to limited number, finite number, limited number of words or sentences. The rules are applied to them, and just by changing the words, just by giving different combinations, you utter so many sentences. You get so many sentences just by organizing them, just by changing their place. The way a child builds up the vocabulary storehouse, the child has limited vocabulary and just keeps on changing the arrangements, changing the words, learning new words, acquiring new words, adding to his vocabulary storehouse. A child grows up building the language storehouse, and then you can expect so many utterances. So with of course, as a man goes, a child grows, you expect more language coming, and you expect the vocabulary increasing. So a child increases vocabulary under the influence of so many things, the competence level, or also the social or the society or the environment in which the child is growing up. So this is the basically idea of generative grammar. It's a set of rules, and you apply it, and by modifying it, by adding more words, you get so many utterances out of a person. To say that a grammar generates a sentence means that a grammar assigns a structural description to the sentence. Structural description. A man has a sentence, so he applies structural rules, applies grammatical rules, grammatical description, grammatical laws, the inbuilt rules, applies to a sentence, and then makes it meaningful. utters a meaningful sentence. Generates a sentence means, what do you mean by, if we say that a man generates a sentence? Generates a sentence means that the person has a set of rules and gets some words, gets a sentence, gets some words from outside, applies those rules to the words and generates a sentence. To say that a grammar generates a sentence means that grammar assigns a structural description or to the sentence. Formally, if we see, let's see a formal definition of generative grammar. Formally, a generative grammar is basically defined as one that is fully explicit. It is a finite set of rules based on a subconscious set of procedures that can be applied to generate all those and only those sentences, often but not necessarily infinite in number, that are grammatical in a given language. So we get a very comprehensive and a very good definition of generative grammar. The idea, the grammar given by the generativists, given by Noam Chomsky and his followers, it's a finite set of rules. The grammar which is limited, the grammar, the rules which are limited, and they are based on the innate, they are based on the innate structure, based on the inherited structure, based on the genetic structure. They are based on the subconscious set of procedures that can be applied. Now, what are they? How are they used? They are applied to generate. What is the use of that? Innate ability. The use of that innate ability is to acquire language, to get the language, to get the words in the mind, generate sentences, meaningful sentences. A child takes different words, understands them, organizes them into sentences, meaningful sentences. So that is basically the generative grammar. Generative grammar is based on subconsciousness, set of procedures that can be applied. You apply a set of procedures. It's a procedure. It's a rule. It's a law. It's a stepwise procedure. There are different steps of organizing the way you correct a sentence in your common life. The way you are correcting a sentence, when you are organizing it, you are applying different procedures to a sentence to correct it. When you get a faulty sentence or sentence with deviations, you correct it by applying different sets, different procedures, and that is basically called the set of procedures. So you apply that procedure, the set of procedures, and what do you do after that? You generate all those and only those sentences, often but not necessarily infinite in number. Now you generate so many sentences. You generate first hundreds of sentences, then thousands of sentences, then millions of sentences, millions of words. How do you do that? You're just basically taking the different words from around yourself, sometimes taking different words from books, maybe taking some words from the media, taking different words from your friends, from people around you. You are organizing them and uttering sentences. So that is how your knowledge increases. The storehouse of language is building up. It's growing. And how is it growing? You are applying rules to it, rules to the words, rules to the sentences you are getting from outside, and application of that generative grammar, you are producing more and more sentences. Okay, summing up today's discussion, let's talk about some of the major points, some of the focal points of today's lesson. Generativism, as we said, is an integrated whole in which the technical details of formalization are on a par with a number of logically unconnected ideas about language and the philosophy of science. So it's an integrated whole in which there are technical details of formalization. The formal rules are present. The details of formal grammar are present. They are, along with the number of logically unconnected ideas, they are applied to logically unconnected ideas. There is no logic between the sentences. There is no logic in those ideas, and you are applying your formal ideas, your formal rules to them, and you are forming up a language. And the philosophy of science, it becomes just like a science. The set of rules you are applying to the logically unconnected ideas, and you are getting the formal structure, you are getting a proper language, meaningful language. Language is free from stimulus control. We said that Chomsky doesn't believe in the stimulus controlled language. Chomsky says that language, generation of language, the ability to generate language is free from any stimulus control. It has no, the stimulus or the outside stimuli doesn't have, they don't have any influence on the power to generate language. Humans can produce variety of utterances. They can produce millions and millions of utterances, millions of words and millions of sentences, but they are, that is done based on the rules, based on the innate capacity to acquire language and generate language. It is a rule-governed creativity. We said you can't expect. You can't expect meaningful utterances. You can't have meaningful utterances if you don't apply the rules. It's a rule-governed creativity. It's ability to create language is governed by rules. You can't expect the meaningful utterances or the meaningful sentences if you are not applying the rules. We produce utterances with a certain grammatical structure. Generativism is different from Bloomfieldian and post-Bloomfieldian structuralism. Of course, then we talked about what is the difference, what are the differences between Bloomfield, the ideas of Bloomfield, that they were talking about the variations in language, they were talking about the differences, but here generativists, they talked about the common things, languages. They emphasized on the structural diversity. They talked about the difference thing, the differences between languages, the differences between two languages, or the differences among the many languages. That was the idea of Bloomfield and the followers. Whereas generativists, they were interested more in the similarities in language. They were picking up what was similar in different languages. Chomsky gives importance to the formal properties. Then we talked about his focus on the formal properties, Chomsky's stress on the taking up the formal part of the grammar, formal properties of languages, and to the nature of the rules that the description requires. In human language, again, we said that human language faculty is basically innate, it's species specified, it's the innate ability, it comes from inheritance. So because of inheritance, you have a storehouse, you get the power to acquire language, the power to generate language. Another difference we talked about was competence and performance. This is another difference between the two ideas. Competence and performance was the idea given by Chomsky that a person builds up the competence gradually by acquiring more words, more language bits from around him, and builds up the storehouse of language, the storehouse of words and sentences, and gradually builds up competence. So competence is basically, it comes from the ability to acquire language, the ability to acquire the words and sentences, understand them, and generate more words and sentences. So that is the competence. And the performance, how he performs, what words and sentences a person utters. And we said that performances may vary because of social situations. Competence also may vary because of the situations, because of the hereditary differences, because of the genetic differences, because of the mind, because of the family backgrounds, because of the things coming from genes. So competence may vary and performance also may vary. Then of course Chomsky gave two different words, like the semantic competence and the pragmatic competence, the semantic competence and the competence related with the words. So these because performance is a general word and doesn't give the true index of what performance you are talking about. So language behavior determined only by competence, but also by other factors. This was the next point, that language behavior is not determined only by competence, but so many other factors, they play a very dominant role in forming a competence, in building up the competence. Competence performance distinction at the heart of generativism. The final concluding idea was that basically at the heart of generativism, the main focal point, the pivotal point of generativism was competence performance. They believe in that. The distinction was similar to Lang-Parole. We compared it with Lang-Parole, Saussurian idea, Lang-Parole. Identifiable difference was on the basis of syntax, how two speakers produce sentences, and what is the difference between Lang and Parole. They took the syntax level in order to differentiate, in order to talk about the power, in order to talk about the ability to acquire language and the ability to use the language. In the coming lesson, we'll be further extending this idea. We'll be talking more about the generative grammar, how grammar is used, how different varieties of language or different utterances are given based on those rules. So we'll be using this idea, the same idea of generativists, to study the change in language, to study the different utterances given by different speakers. So we will move on to the second part of generativism in the coming lesson. Till then, it's the end of this part of the lecture, this part of the first part of the generativists. So see you in the next lecture. It's goodbye from here.